Welcome back to Sagenheim, where yesterday you've heard about the young heroic legend Sigurd, his master and foster father Mime, and his brother Regin, the dragon. And today, on the 30th part, we will read to you something new. There was a king named Aldrian, who ruled over Niflungaland. He was a powerful man, and his wife was the daughter of a powerful king. It happened one time when she was drunk with wine, and when the king was not at home in his kingdom, that she fell asleep in a garden outdoors. And there came a man, and he lay with her. When she awakened, she thought she recognized King Aldrian. But before she was completely awake, the man disappeared. And when some time had passed, the queen was pregnant. Before she gave birth, it happened that she was standing alone. The same man came to her and told her what had happened the first time they had met. He told that she was pregnant and that the child was his with her. He said that he was an elf. If that child should grow up, tell him about his paternity, but keep it secret from everyone else. It will be a boy, as I can already tell, and he will be a great man. He will often be in great danger, and whenever he stands in such danger and cannot save himself, he should call on his father, and will be there when I am needed. And then the elf disappeared like a shadow. When the time had passed, the queen bore a son, and she named the boy Högni, and he was called the son of King Aldrian. And when he was 4 years old, he would go to play with other boys. He was strong and ill-tempered, and it was said of him that he looked like a troll, and not like man in shape and appearance. He became very angry at this, and went to a pond, and looked at his reflection. And he saw that his face was as white as the inner bark of a lime tree, and as pale as ashes, and that he was large, frightening and grim. He went to his mother, and asked her how it came about that he had such an appearance. And she now told him the truth about his paternity. A woman stood nearby and heard, and she was later a concubine of King Thidrek, and told him these things in confidence, and from this they later became known. King Aldrian had 3 sons, and 1 daughter with his wife. The eldest son was named Gunnar, the second Gernot, and the third Gisler. He was still a child when these things took place, and their sister was called Grimhild. And when King Aldrian died, he left his kingdom. It was Gunnar who took his power, and his kingdom after him. King Thidrek had a great and rich feast prepared for the honor and entertainment of his men, and he invited all of the most powerful men in his kingdom, as well as many other men and chieftains to the feast. Gunnar and his men traveled to the feast in Bern, and he was warmly welcomed. The feast was now prepared with all the best provisions, that were needed for it. All the most distinguished men and the best friends sat together there. All of these men sat on one dais. King Thidrek and King Gunnar, and Högni and Hildibrand, and Earl Hornbogi. On the left hand sat Vidga, Amlung, Tedleif and Fasold, Sistram and Vildifair, Herbrand the Wise and Far-Travelled, and Heimir the Grim. Everyone said that there had never come together more distinguished and valiant men in one hall, nor had more outstanding men assembled for the sake of their accomplishments than had come there at that time. King Thidrek had a shield of this kind. It was painted red and bore the mark of a lion in gold, whose head was turned up towards the top of the shield, and whose feet grasped the lower edge. Thidrek had adopted this sign since becoming king over Bern, and there stood a crown of gold over the lion's head. He also had this mark on his banner, on his saddle, and on his surcoat, and one could recognize him by this wherever he rode. And everyone who wished to describe his appearance must depict him thus. He chose this emblem because the lion is the greatest animal in nobility and in mind, and all animals in the world are afraid of him. And Thidrek was in the same manner unafraid and superior to all men, and all were afraid of him and of his weapons. And that time, no one could have a lion on his shield who had ever wanted to flee. Hildibrand the Old had a shield the same color as Thidrek's, and there was a white castle with golden towers on it. And this castle was drawn after the city of Bern. Hildibrand had this mark on his standard and on his surcoat, with all the same color as King Thidrek's, because he never wished to hide the fact that he was Thidrek's vassal wherever he rode, and he would never attempt to escape any kind of danger or trouble by hiding their friendship. Heimir the Proud had all of his weapons marked in this way. He had a blue shield with the mark of a horse in a pale color on it, and this was painted on all of his armor. The blue color showed his cold breast and grim heart, and the horse showed the trait of his family, and that he was the best of riders. Vidga, the son of Velend, looked like this. He had white hair like the flower called the lily, and it was thick and fell in great curls. His hair and his face and all of his body were bright and white as snow. His eyes were penetrating, so that one could scarcely look at him when he was angry. One could not call him long-faced or broad-faced, because everything was well proportioned, and still large and fair, and hardy in all respects. But when he became angry, his face became red as blood and grim. He was the tallest of all men who were not considered giants, and his shoulders were large, both thick and broad, and he was moderately slender, and his limbs were the best shaped of any man. He stood up straight, and his whole appearance was such that everyone said that there was no one more courtly or more distinguished. And his temperament was thus. He was quiet and thoughtful, and when he sat with his comrades, and there were few men present, he was happy and voluble, but he was usually taciturn, and wise in his speech in large crowds. He was gentle and modest with his friends, and when he was at war and had his weapons, he was immediately so grim that there was no sort of battle that he thought dangerous. He was quite strong and very wise, and he was superior to most men who have been created in all accomplishments. Vidga the Strong had all of his equipment white in color: shield, saddle, surcoat, banner, and helmet cover. His shield was marked with red paint in the shape of a hammer and tongs, and there are 3 carbuncle stones in his shield. The mark is a sign of the origin of his father. He is a smith and the most skilled of all men in the world. The 3 gemstones signify his mother. On his helmet cover, there is drawn a poisonous serpent in red gold. He bears that mark over his head because it should be hidden from no one how powerful his temper and his anger would be if anyone were to challenge him. The same serpent was on his saddle and on his surcoat, as well as on his banner and on his shield. He marked his equipment brightly, so that one can recognize him from the greatest distance, wherever he might ride. We will hear how Earl Hornbogi, Amlung, Sistram of Wenden, and many heroes more are being described in the next part of the Thidrekssaga. So thanks for tuning in, and see you again next time, back here at Sagenheim.